it is great to be here. And whilst obviously it's sad that we can't indeed be doing these things in person, I'm delighted to be here because I'm in Melbourne, Australia. So it'd be really hard for me to pop in on a Thursday evening to LA without quite a lot of jet lag. All the same, let's get this started. My name is Nash. I am a developer evangelist at Twilio. Twilio, if you don't know, is a communications platform. We have a whole bunch of APIs that you can use in your applications, like sending and receiving text messages or making and receiving phone calls or sending emails or video chats or anything you basically, as long as it involves communications, we can help you out with that. If you ever want to ask me about those things, I am Phil Nash, pretty much everywhere online. Hit me up on Twitter or drop me an email at philnash@twilio.com. Also, I'm in Rambly. This is the first time I've ever used it, and I'm pretty delighted. I'm a raccoon. I'm just a little trash panda. It's wonderful. I'll see you there after this talk, I guess. But let's talk about this. So we're talking a little bit about authentication and better authentication experiences, because I don't know if you're anything like me. But when you're, well, I first of all have two-factor authentication set up on a whole bunch of my accounts. This is because I have lost access to accounts in the past. I was bad. I was bad at reusing passwords all over the place, and I breached somewhere, let people into my account somewhere else, and it was bad. So I have two-factor authentication on everything, and I recommend you do it as well. But my problem is the experience with two-factor authentication, because I'll get a message like this, or I'll have to open my Authenticator app, and then I'll forget what I was doing. I'm apparently incredibly easily distracted. I will forget what I was doing. I will see another notification. I will end up on Twitter for 20 minutes and then kind of glance back up at my screen or realize the app that I used to have open on my device and is still waiting for me to log in, and I haven't achieved anything. That I think is a bad thing. And it happens to me more often than I'd like to admit. But we can fix it, because the user experience on this, right, is bad. I think it's poop emoji bad. And in the world of performance on the web, there's been research done that shows that adding like 1/10 of a second of latency to an experience will drop conversion rates by significant amounts, and that's performance, and that's tiny at the edge of user experience and tweaking. But in this particular case, we're talking about the login experience, and getting in the way of somebody logging in to use your application is almost certainly, it's important to get them logged in, obviously. It's important for them to be secure, but putting this massive roadblock of maybe a text message or an Authenticator app in the way is, it's bad. We put up with it for the security. Helps us, we kind of have to look at all the people using web applications these days. Because back in 2018, right at the end, I think, of 2018, Google did a poll, did a survey asking about security things. And password reuse was one of their questions. Like, do you reuse passwords in your account? Some of the time, all of the time, and never. And so some of the time won out by quite a bit. I think that's 52%. Some of the time people reuse their password. So that's bad. And then there's this 13% of people who are just like, yep, I have one password. That's all I need. I'm going to be great with this. And then there's these never people who are probably using password managers, right? Maybe you yourself are using a password manager. I know I am now after, like I said, getting accounts broken into. But in the same poll, they also asked, do you use a password manager? And the answer yes to that was 24%. So there's kind of like either an extra 11% of people in this never bucket who are either lying or have an enormous number of Post-it notes around their monitor on their desk with a different password for every account. I think they were probably lying and they just didn't want to admit it. But anyway, 24% of people do use a password manager. That's cool. But we have to deal with that 76% of people who are going to get broken into. And so what we do is come up with ever increasingly difficult rules to make a password exist. It's got to be long. It must contain at least 8 letters, a capital, a plot, a protagonist with good character development, a twist, and a happy ending. Is one of my favorite set of password rules. Ones you might be more familiar with are just like, you need a capital and some lower cases and some numbers and a special character. And then everybody creates the word that looks like this, maybe not the same word, a dictionary word that's 8 characters long, and you add the capital to the first letter, and then you add a number, probably number last, to the end, and then you add an exclamation point because that's the same key as the number 1, so you don't have to move that far to type it. And we get a password that looks like this. And those passwords are really easy to break because they cut down the search space. So if you want to take play a dictionary attack against somebody's account to break in, you can just use all the dictionary words with capital letters and lowercase for the rest, and some number and special character combinations. That's much easier than searching all potential character combinations. And so that makes it really easy to break in. And then, of course, other web applications are out there also making it easy to break in. This is haveibeenpwned.com. If you have not ever been to haveibeenpwned.com, you should go now, put in your email address and find out how many different data sets your email address and password exist in. It will scare you. If you have been there, you already know it's terrifying. So other applications are just leaking passwords all over the place. And this is where that password reuse is broken for us, right? Because some other application has told everybody our password, and if you reuse that password, then you're going to get your account hacked. That's how I lost both my Spotify account, my Skype account, but not my Dropbox account. That was in the same day. I lost 3 accounts. I nearly lost 3 accounts. The Dropbox account, I got a text message with a login code, and I did not send that on to anybody, so I didn't lose access to that. But the other 2, I eventually got back. But a few days without my Skype account wasn't the worst thing in the world. But and ask me about this later. The person who took over the Skype account used it to proposition men in French over the text chat. It was very bizarre. Anyway, factor authentication is our solution to this, right? It stops us having to make unrememberable, unusable password rules, and it allows us to use a second factor, normally a phone number where we're sending text messages, or a device, either an authenticator application or even like a YubiKey kind of thing. If we have a second factor, you can't just lose your password and lose your account. So two-factor authentication is great for this, but it comes with those problems I described at the start, where people like me and maybe other people just end up doing something else instead of logging into their application. So how do we fix that? Well, thankfully, the web has now given us more tools to make this process better. And I'm going to talk through a couple of them today for the rest of this talk. And the first one, I'm afraid, I know this is js.la, but I'm starting with HTML because this is an easy thing to do, right? And if you don't know about this, it's also sort of mind-blowing that it is this easy to add a new thing. The input element in HTML is, I think, the most versatile, the most ridiculous element, really. You change one attribute, you change its type attribute, and it completely changes its look and behavior. But it's hiding a whole bunch of other attributes that can make things fun as well. And autocomplete is one of them. See, if you are doing a two-factor authentication or a phone verification style application, and you have your text input, if you just add autocomplete one-time code onto that input, then that's it. Then it autocompletes, or it does in certain browsers. This is mostly, this happens in Safari. And I have an example application that I built here in which I log in, and this then does a two-factor authentication for myself. And that sent the message, and that moved by so quickly, I had to put the controls back into this video so we could see it in action. It sends the message, and then right down there in the autocomplete section of the keyboard, messages is suggesting this is that login code. And like, I experienced this a number of times and found myself, wondering how this was done. And so I went, and this is what sort of started my journey into finding all of this stuff out. This is simply the autocomplete attribute with one-time code in there. It tells Safari to ask iOS in this case, what have we got any text messages recently, and do them look like some 6 digits in the login code? And if they do, it offers it up, and you just plug it straight in. Well, there we go. Plug it straight in, and you're logged in. It's a great experience. It doesn't take you out of the flow. It's great. I love it. And it's an autocomplete attribute. And the autocomplete attribute actually has many, many more potential values. Some of these are more useful ones in terms of logging in or signing up. So you can use autocomplete username or email to distinguish between the two if you need to do that. Autocomplete new password and current password are really useful. So new password is great because it tends to indicate to a browser that this is sign up and we need to generate a new password. Also useful for your password managers to fill things in. But current password is great for when you're signing in. That's an existing password, so you can fill that in, not suggest a new one. And then if you are doing password updates where you expect the person to put in their old password and then the new password twice, adding new and current password autocomplete attributes to those will make sure that the browser and or your password manager sort of understand better what's going on this page, which just otherwise would have 3 input type passwords. So it's really useful. There's other ones, you can put in all sorts of other autocomplete stuff, normally around names, addresses, and things like that. But in terms of our login challenge here, these are the really useful ones. And so this is actually Firefox. If you have autocomplete new password on a password field, it will suggest you a securely generated password. I love this. I've never used it because I have a password manager, but Firefox is sort of a password manager itself. So I highly recommend this. The autocomplete attribute is brilliant. It's my favorite. Now we can do some other stuff to improve this as well. If you just put an input type of text for a code like this, you're going to get on any mobile device or any device with a software keyboard, you're going to see the regular keyboard, but we're asking for digits to be entered. So even if we're not going to get this autocomplete behavior, we still want a nicer keyboard behavior. And you might think input type number is the way forward because a two-factor authentication code is a number. But that's not really what we want. That actually gives us the number keyboard if we press like number down next to the space here, which has a whole bunch of other mathematical symbols and commas and all sorts of stuff in it, which we don't want. What we really want is input mode numeric. And input mode is also really useful. It allows us to control what that keyboard looks like. And in terms of numeric, it's great because all we need is some digits and numeric gives us just digits. It doesn't even give us a decimal place, which would normally hang out here next to the 0. So input type numeric also useful when we're doing this. Now I wanted to, I'm going to spoil this because obviously I also work on the desktop and then get text messages for login code and have to look at my phone and then stop logging in because I've been put off. But I wanted to work out if this would work on desktop as well. Inside the Apple ecosystem, you are in luck. So if you are using Safari on desktop on Mac OS and you're using your iPhone and you've got that all hooked up together so that messages come into your Mac, then you are indeed in luck. And check this out. Play the video. There we go. If you do log in, text message will come through and boom, Safari will suggest that even on the desktop. It's an amazing experience. I don't know what happened with my button styling here, by the way. This talk will not be covering CSS, I can promise you that. But yeah, that fill-in code for messages appears on Safari desktop as well. So in the Apple ecosystem, all we need to do is add this one attribute, this autocomplete one-time code, and suddenly logging in and two-factor authentication or verification of phone numbers all happens in just a couple of taps, and you don't ever have to worry about copying 6 digits or remembering 6 digits or not getting put off by something. Brilliant. So what about everything else? Yeah, plenty of people in the world using Android devices, and that's where the WebOTP library, WebOTP API comes in. The WebOTP API is like a specification of itself. It's more of a spec than an API because it actually piggybacks on the credential management API inside browsers. The credential management API is not a particularly popular one that I can tell right now. It actually allows you to securely store a user's username and password so that the browser itself can retrieve them and log a user in securely without having to get password manager involved. It's actually very cool. But I don't think the user experience is that well understood, at least by users. So I've not seen it really live that much. The credential management API allows you to do part of the work for web authentication, which is the passwordless login, which is very cool, but also has its sort of user experience issues. Things like WebAuth then kind of only works for one device, right? The device you're using. And so you kind of need an account that maybe ties a bunch of those together in order to log in on multiple devices. It gets a little confusing. And if you don't have the hardware in order to use WebAuth, then you're also out of luck. But WebOTP uses that basis, the credential management API, and allows the browser to request from the SMS application on a device the code for this. So this actually starts with the message that you send. This is a security enhancement to these kind of messages, in that we can use the same message we had before. Your super awesome login app verification code is this, but you need to add 2 extra things to it. You need the URL that the user is going to be on whilst making this request, and then we need an @ the domain, and then a hash, and then the characters in the code. And this allows the WebOTP API to read that correctly, and it also allows it to know that the website that you're on that is making the request for a code is making it correctly, because the domain name is going to match that's in the message. So it's a little bit more strict than iOS will let you get away with. But if you add this, you can then use that the credentials management API. If you call out the credentials get and then pass in this object that says OTP and the transport is SMS, then if the user, so this is a promise, and it's a promise based on user permissions. So the user has to agree to allow this credential to be taken out of its SMS. If you do get that, you get an object with a code property, and that's it. That is the 6 digits that you need to get that person logged in, which I think is really cool, because now we're in charge of it in JavaScript. We can enter that into the input. We can submit the form. We can move the person along immediately. All they had to do was agree to the permissions. And this looks like this. And again, I had to put the controls in so I can pause it at some point, because I did this so quickly when I was recording this that it whipped by like that, and I was logged in. I couldn't believe it. So if I move that back a little bit, we can see this is where it happened. We were waiting for the message to come. You can see the message arrived on my Android device at the top here, but also here's the permission saying, hey, this is the code, this is the message. Is Chrome okay to put this in? And if you just allow, then everything is fine and everything moves on. So again, we've now created an experience that was going to be slow, was going to include you having to, I mean, actually, you can see at the top here, the Messages app has already been quite smart with this little copy message here. So being able to copy the message out of the notification there is very cool. But you still have to paste and enter and press go if you're doing it that way. Right here, this little allow button at the bottom plugs it in and allows us to submit the form, and everybody's happy. We're just logged in. Never had to touch the other notification. So you can actually play with this. I've built a little bit of an application. It is only pretty much live as long as I'm on this talk. But if you go right now on your mobile device, whether that's Android or iOS, if you go to philnash.ngrok.io, then you can see this in action yourself. There's a little verification app there. You just plug your phone number in to start with. It'll send you a code, and then and hopefully, if you're an iOS, Autocomplete. If you're on an Android device, you will get the little pop-up permissions there and see it happening yourself. If you do get to have a go at this, come and find me in Rambly and tell me if it worked or not. I hope it does. I can see somebody has had a go, or at least got to the home page. There we go. It's working. I know what's going on in the background here. Do put your full international phone number in there. That is the country code. So a plus, the country code, so +1 probably, and then the rest of your digits. That's the best way to do it. And see if you get those notifications. And whilst you're having a look at that, I'll tell you that, and I don't have a video for this because I couldn't get it to work. I am in the Apple ecosystem. I'm on a Mac and I have an iPhone here. I do have a testing Android device, and I'm supposedly, if you are in Google Chrome and you have that hooked up and you're logged into Chrome, into the application Chrome, and you're logged in your Android device, this should all be able to share across to the desktop as well. So the OTP credential API is available on the desktop, but I couldn't make it work. It's probably because I don't have my account set up correctly. So if you also have like a Chrome desktop there and you're an Android Chrome user, check that out for me as well. See if share it across and do the permissions from within your desktop Chrome browser. I'd love to know. Successes. That's good to see. Sorry if it's breaking for you at all. It's always interesting. If you do get through and verify successfully, you get a picture of my dog. So I hope that's worked out for you too. She's very cute. There has been something I've kind of left out of this little bit of excitement of just autocomplete and WebOTP kind of stuff, is that I've mentioned a bunch of times authenticator applications. They are not part of this right now. When we look at, if I go back to the code, we look at this. This is all the code you can write for this. Navigator credential get, OTP transport SMS. I think it's really interesting the way that the spec was designed because it is clearly extensible. And I love that about how people on the web building specs like this think about this. That transport can take an array of things. And so you can imagine that Authenticator app could be an option to this. And if all you ever give access to two-factor authentication is via like a QR code scan, you maybe only want Authenticator app as the transport. If you make it an option of SMS or a QR code scan, you could have both. And this gives the browser and then the underlying operating system the opportunity to reach out, talk to the operating system, talk to an SMS app, and maybe get that code out of the app as well. I really like that because I kind of do prefer Authenticator apps for being that little bit extra secure. But that is the future. We depend on the spec writers and the implementers and the operating systems, I guess, in order to make this actually work. But maybe this will come for our Authenticator apps as well. But overall, this is just a few lines of code, an attribute and a few lines of code when it comes to the WebOTP API that enhances our experience. And it is one of those progressive enhancements, because if a browser or an operating system does not support this, the user still gets their existing secure login. But if we have the capability to enhance our experience and give a user an auto-filled code, stop them having to open their SMS application, stop them having to glance away at a different device, we have enhanced the experience and made their lives a lot easier. I love the way the web kind of keeps marching forward and trying to enhance these things. And you know, we will march forward and start to see more credential management, I think, and more WebAuthn in the future as well, which would be great. But with a few lines of code, I think we can make these two-factor authentication, at least over SMS, experiences better and stop me leaving what I was doing and browsing Twitter for 20 minutes. That's all I've got for you. That app is still going. You can still see people checking stuff, which is very cool. As I said at the start, my name's Nash. I am a developer evangelist at Twilio. I will be hanging around in Rambly, so come and chat with me there, or find me again online at any of these places. Thank you very much.